Welcome to the Stronghold Podcast, where we explore capability and truth. I'm your host, Dave Barton, and today in episode 28, Art of the Conversation, we're diving into conversation. Finally, you might be thinking, Dave, I have conversations every day. I talk to my spouse, my kids, my friends, my coworkers. I even talk to strangers out in the wild occasionally. And you're right. That is conversation. With conversation, we're given the ability to harness energy. We're capable of bringing emotions of joy, confidence, peace, sorrow, despair, or self-doubt, all through our spoken words. If we choose to, we can impact those we know most closely. We can even impact the course of their life. The power also works on us. Those words flow without boundaries. In fact, this energy works most powerfully on us. Not to get sidetracked, but I recently heard that our conscious mind cannot easily distinguish between words used towards others versus words used towards ourselves. This would explain why we often attract the very things our words serve or espouse. More on that in the future. But as we will discuss today, there are different types of conversations. I certainly won't cover them all, but I will draw out the common types versus the uncommon. For the purposes of the podcast and to help you recall, if you choose to share this episode or put it into practice, I want to make it easier for you to take them away. So I'm going to group them into 4 categories based on tone or setting. So the first 2 are common. The first one is friendly or humorous. These are conversations that are warm and engaging. It's like catching up with a friend. They're lighthearted, they're entertaining. It involves joking around. It might even be conversations on a text thread or a social media thread. The second sort of common conversation is professional. And professional conversations they're respectful, they're goal-oriented, they're workplace discussions, they're transactional meetings. The second 2 types of conversations are a little bit more uncommon. The first is conflictual. Now, conflictual conversations or moments are like disagreements or arguments. They're political debates. They're confrontations. They're engagements where we want to win, we feel wronged, are fully committed to something, or we're only speaking with very little listening involved. And then the final type of conversation, and unfortunately it's uncommon as well, is the deep philosophical, or as I like to call it, the organic conversation. These are reflective, thought-provoking. An example of one of these deep, philosophical, organic conversations might be discussing the meaning of life. It's this type of conversation, aside from and inclusive of all the others, that puts on full display our ability as a participant and the true art of the conversation. In his book, 12 Rules, Jordan Peterson's Rule 9 shares that the conversation of mutual exploration, by contrast, requires people who have decided that the unknown makes a better friend than the known. You might have heard the saying, space, the final frontier. But I would say conversation is the most essential frontier. It was in this deep, organic type of conversation where someone first shared with another the idea of space travel, world outside the known, or the idea for a show called Star Trek in the first place. Conversation predates the idea. Conversation fosters the idea. It shares the idea. It refines the idea and provides the idea to others, giving birth to, you guessed it, new ideas. Again, in Rule 9, Jordan Peterson goes on to say that a conversation like this is one where it is the desire for truth itself on the part of both participants that is truly listening and speaking. I would rephrase this a little bit as it is where the energy of truth itself enters, and from the participants requires truly listening and speaking from its presence. The gift returned from the energy of truth to the participants is life, creation, and experience. These types of conversations are engaging. They're vital. They're interesting, meaningful. They foster growth, love, peace, understanding, and intention. They nurture, create, and further thought itself. They matter. Throughout history, we've had these deep organic conversations, and they've shaped mankind. The Greeks saw conversation as a path to truth. Socrates engaged in dialogues, better known as the Socratic method, to challenge assumptions, while Aristotle formalized rhetoric, teaching persuasion through ethos, or credibility, pathos, emotion, and logos, logic. Coffee houses in 17th and 18th century Europe became hotbeds of political and philosophical discussion. This earned them the nickname penny universities for the wealth of knowledge exchanged. This tradition has been reignited today in coffee houses that you and I each visit every week. Finally, podcasts like the one you're listening to today and their long-form conversations have become a source for news, thought expression, intellect, and growth. Is this every podcast? I don't know. Maybe. But ask yourself why you listen to them. I believe we listen because we are seeking. When we listen, we are inside the conversations that we are craving or admire. I've had many of these conversations through my life, starting with my memory back to the late night high school conversations till 3 a.m, where we'd talk about love or faith or whatever the characters of the conversation brought. With my wife, we've grown to know and love every part of each other. And our conversations vary daily, but it is the ones about life and exploration of our heart that I remember and delight in. These conversations with my wife have formed anchors through our marriage. 26 years later, they fostered a shared vision of what we dream of. And they mark where we'll meet up again when we pass through different stages of life. Last August, I was blessed to sit down with my friend Greg Anderson on his podcast Endless Endeavor. When he extended the invite, I didn't accept right away. I thought, Greg has a big audience. What would I talk about that would provide any value for his listeners? Okay, maybe I had a little to talk about, but how would we fill 2 hours? Then my analyst side of my brain kicked in. I thought, I'll chart out how the conversation might go with bullet points and such. Then we went through 4 days of rolling jujitsu, shooting, and bonding at Guns and Geese. This left me in a state to receive. What I would receive in this case was the gift of conversation. Greg hit record, and we were off. There's a point in the conversation early on where we simply clicked. It was as if I was listening to myself and listening to Greg at the same time. I became an observer, and the energies being exchanged provided the words. Toward the end, he asked me how long I thought we had been talking. I guessed a little over an hour. Turns out it was over 2 hours. And when the episode aired, I listened. I knew broadly what we had discussed, but in that moment, I felt like a listener, experiencing it all again. Since that moment, I started the Stronghold Podcast, and I've experienced this deep state, or as I like to refer to it, organic conversation with many of my guests. When I send out an invite to each guest, I share broadly the tenets of the podcast, truth and capability, and what they have meant in my guests' lives. But I encourage the guests to come as they are. We all have a story, and we all deserve it to be heard. So far, that approach is batting 1,000. As I said earlier, these conversations put on full display your ability as a participant and the true art of the conversation. I've come to believe jiu-jitsu mirrors life. And in conversation, there are belts. And when you find someone of a similar level to push you, it is enjoyable. It's also enjoyable sharing conversation with people who both exceed your skills and are working their way up, but committed to the exchange. In these deep, organic conversations, we get to play again. We experience a chance to be heard, to hear ourselves, and to listen to others. Together, we weave new thoughts, refine old ones, delight, cope, and we push ourselves to grow. If that sounds like creating to you, it is. We covered that back in episode 20, and I encourage you to go back to that episode entitled Creating. But I believe nourishing your soul with creating is essential, and it's lacking for so many humans today. Maybe you thought about jumping back into creating as an adult, but you're undecided on what medium: music, pottery, painting, woodworking. How about conversation? With conversation in mind, I'd like you to think about who your go-to friends are, that you travel beyond the friendly, outside the professional, away from the conflictual, and together you jump right into the depths of the organic conversation. Who do you enjoy practicing the art of conversation with? Not sure who these people are? Well, I would ask you, who do you leave a conversation with and think, wow, or that was great? If you thought of something, I encourage you to tell them that, or lean into it more. Seek it out, set up a coffee, join a community, invite friends over for a dinner party. Practice the art. I mentioned earlier that it's this type of conversation, aside from and inclusive of all the others, that puts on full display our ability as a participant and the true art of the conversation. In addition to this, I'm discovering that it's actually these deep and organic conversations that are fostering growth in other types of conversations for me. In the friendly or humorous conversations, I'm able to get to the heart of the humor, engage quicker, share joy, receive joy. My ability to enjoy the moment of the friendly or humorous conversation is strengthened because the extended reality or the deep conversation is being addressed somewhere else. In those professional or workplace conversations, they're now more enjoyable because I appreciate two things. I can be my authentic self. In fact, it's all I want to be. And the importance of listening to what my coworkers or business partners are really saying. The unspoken, the tones, the gestures, the heart. Finally, those conflictual conversations. They're abundant. In these agreements or arguments, political debates, confrontations, engagements where we want to win, we feel wronged, we're fully committed to something. We're only speaking with very little listening involved. They used to mean so much to me. But I've come to learn it's when I win an argument, I often lose the relationship. Sometimes that's just fine. But if I value the fruits of the Spirit, love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control, and I do, then I need to hit the mats of conversation. I need to understand what is in my power and what is out of my control. And that not everyone is entitled to my reaction. Let me repeat that again. Not everyone is entitled to my reaction. Remember, it's with conversation we are given the ability to harness energy, and I refuse to expend mine on those who choose meaningless conflict. My conscious mind cannot easily distinguish words spoken in conflict, and I refuse to attract others' ignorance. This is an art, and I'll admit, my expression is not flawless, but I am an artist. And I do feel like there's very little spoken toward me that will draw conflict. Now, if you speak ill will toward or threaten my family or loved ones, on the other hand, it isn't words, but rather action that you'll receive. Across these types of conversations, friendly, professional, conflictual, or deep organic, the more I practice the art, the better human I become. As I've been practicing the art of conversation, I've escaped those echo chambers of my beliefs. Put me in a room that believes all the same things I do, and that's fine in small doses. But if you put me in a room where beliefs vary, I now thrive. Human beings are so amazing, and it's conversation we get to participate in that draws that out. I enjoy conversations with genius scholars and with people that never graduate high school. I hold conversations with doctors, but I also love talking to healers. My conversations with my Christian friends are balanced with Muslims, Norse mythology, shamans, witches. I find the conversations I have with law enforcement just as engaging as the ones I have with criminals. I love to converse about running, but if you speak passionately about ski running, and I'm still not exactly sure what that is, I'm down to listen and learn. You see, these deep, inorganic conversations, they create portals where the energy of truth itself enters, and it returns to the participants life, creation, and experience. It's in conversation that we're shown that truth is not a possession that one single group has, but rather the point of entry into the energy of truth itself. This podcast is about exploring capability and truth, and there are so many reasons that matters. In the case of conversation, it is truth that is most vital. Friendly, professional, and conflictual conversation is abundant in society and serves many masters: distraction, growth, resolution, division, and more. It is deep, organic conversation that serves truth. It is in truth that we grow, deepen relationship, coexist, thrive, and love each other. That matters. So I encourage you to examine your life and the type of conversations you have in the coming weeks. What are they serving, and what are you creating? Go out and speak truth. Be in the energy of truth, and you will start to recognize truth by sound, tone, feeling, and more. The art of the conversation is a perishable skill, but like any perishable skill, it can be honed through intention, practice, and repetition. With that, we've reached the end of the podcast. And as always, I want to thank you for joining me and listening into the Stronghold Podcast.